It's the Auburn Observer Podcast. We are back. Justin Ferguson here, joined by my co-pilot per usual, Dan Peck. Dan, we're not in the Wings 94.3 studio, but we are both in Auburn, Alabama. We've got a little bit of a time crunch for this episode, so we're recording from our home manors or respective compounds here in Auburn.
Ahoy, Justin. Shout out to the Peck Pack. Shout out to the sickos, the hardcores, the inner circle, everybody out there. Wings 94.3, yeah, sometimes they have actual business during the 9 to 5, and so we can't just sneak into the studio without somebody noticing and asking us to leave, and so we're doing this one remotely. We still want to give a big shout-out to our pals at Wings 94.3, your home for the Auburn Sports Network in the Auburn-Opelika area, including Auburn baseball and the NIT game, the semifinal this week. You can catch all that on Wings 94.3, plus lots of great music. Eddie Money, Rick Springfield, Def Leppard. So, yeah, big shout-out to our pals at Wings. I could play a round of the game real quick, Justin. We are pressed for time, but we're never too pressed to see what they're doing over on our on Wings 94.3.
All right, so I just pulled it up, and you might have heard it because I had it wrong on the wrong. Okay, all right, so that is the right song playing right now on Wings according to the menu. So you may have heard it a little bit in the background because I had it on the wrong speakers instead of coming into my headphones, but that's for those of you at home. Dan, what is playing on Wings 94.3 right now as we record this on Tuesday afternoon?
Is it Centerfold by the Jay Giles Band, Justin?
No,
okay.
a rare time when it's not Centerfold by the Jay Giles Band.
All right, is it I don't know. Is it? I can't decide if I want to go lighter or heavier. I'm gonna go "Welcome to the Jungle" by Guns N' Roses.
All right, I will tell you that because if the Wings game obviously is you get 3 guesses, it is lighter than Welcome.
Okay, to the Jungle. All right, interesting.
Lighter. I'll say lighter and older.
Lighter and older than Welcome to the Jungle. Okay, how about something like "Do It Again" by Steely Dan?
Let's see. It's not that. It is around that era, though.
Okay,
you're in the you're in the right ballpark with the 70s.
I know. I think I've already done 3 guesses, but I'll throw Fleetwood Mac out there maybe as a potential.
So Fleetwood Mac was the closest that you came to it, so you did a good job. Currently playing on Wings 94.3 as we record this is "Crazy on You" by Heart.
Oh, Heart's a good one. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Shout out to Wings 94.3 and all the classic hits they're playing all day long.
100%. Well, so Dan and I are recording remotely, and there's a good reason why. I'm about to head to Indianapolis here in a short amount of time. Dan's got a radio show that he's got to do. We're not in the Wings studio, but we wanted to get this podcast out to you guys on Wednesday morning. So it'll be Wednesday morning by the time you listen to this. I'll be in Indy. Dan will be holding it down here in Auburn, and we got a lot to talk about. We're going to start by talking about some Auburn football. We're going to talk Auburn football spring practice, and then in the back half of the show, we're going to go ahead and knock out our preview of the NIT semifinal between Auburn and Illinois State. We talked to Stephen Pearl on Monday. I'll be at practice and press conference and all that on Wednesday in Indianapolis. So we'll have more coverage from it on the newsletter side of the Observer, by the way. If you're not subscribed to the Observer, it's a great time to jump on board. If you were subscribed to the Observer right now, you would have had our breakdown of Alex Golesh's emphasis on the tight end room that we had earlier this week. Before we started recording, I put up some observations from spring practices, which Dan and I we're going to talk about that here shortly. Did a breakdown of what Auburn is getting in their new basketball general manager, who we talked about on the last podcast. And our last podcast was just for subscribers. So auburnobserver.com. Check it out there. Still running that special that we do during spring ball every year. It is just $4 a month or $40 for your first full year. If you do that $40 for the first full year of your Observer subscription, you're basically getting 4 months free. If you do it the other way, with your subscription doing it monthly, it's basically 2 months free. So you're still getting a good deal, but we recommend go ahead and knock it in the year-long subscription, and everything we do gets sent to your email inbox, so you get twice as many podcasts. You get all the newsletters sent straight to your email inbox, covering all things Auburn football and men's basketball. Dan, let's talk some football. Auburn men's football. I said men's football because I usually say men's basketball there, but I will say I saw a report that the Big 12 may be looking into women's flag football, which I think is pretty cool. We've seen this at smaller colleges across the country. That'll be interesting to see. But Dan, Auburn's football team is approaching the halfway point of spring practices. Tuesday was day 7. Day 8 is Thursday night, their first scrimmage. They're going to do that under the lights at Jordan-Hare Stadium. So we won't be at that one. And obviously we'll have the NIT semis in Indy going on at that time as well. So, but we'll have more from that and just kind of what's going on. But Dan, you and I were out there Tuesday morning for the start of week 3 of Auburn football spring practices. And as I wrote the observations, I spent a lot of time, and you were next to me for a lot of it, watching the quarterbacks, which means you watched a lot of the wide receivers and a lot of the tight ends in the passing game. I feel like it had been kind of the first few windows trying to kind of bounce around and do some of everything. This one I just really wanted to lock in with the quarterbacks in the passing game. And I joked with you, Dan, as we were walking off the field, my big observation for Auburn is that Byrum Brown fella, he probably should start at quarterback this year.
Remember that name. File it away. I think that's a player to watch this year when you're breaking down Auburn.
But in all seriousness, I think every time I sit back and watch Byrum, and I got to do it for about a half hour on Tuesday, I continue to come away impressed with what he's bringing to the table for Auburn, because it does look different. And I know there have been some hype about Jackson Arnold throws the ball differently than some of these guys. Obviously it was what Peyton Thorne was bringing to the table. And then, there was a point in time where there was a lot of hype about what TJ Finley was doing or Robbie Ashford was doing. But obviously Auburn has struggled at that quarterback's position.
Well, and some of that, I think, is that it makes sense for a coach to Hugh Freeze talked about it, the importance of confidence at that position. Yeah. And it sort of makes sense for a coach to, as the kids say, gas up their starting quarterback, mm-hmm. right? It makes sense to project confidence in the guy that you're going to have at the most important position. I think the difference here compared to a lot of those situations is you have a track record of these two guys succeeding together before, right? With regards to Alex Golesh and Byrum Brown. And they're not the only two, and far from it, who have jumped over from South Florida to Auburn in the offseason, but with some proof of concept, right? It's a little bit easier to believe what a coach is selling about a quarterback.
Yeah, 100%. And I would say this, the big thing for Byrum Brown is that there's a smoothness to it because he has that confidence. Like, he knows this offense inside and out. He knows a lot of these receivers. He knows just what the coaches are expecting of him, and he's got confidence. We talked to New Boy Fagans, one of the several players we talked to after practice, day and after everything got done on Tuesday. And New Boy's asked about the quarterback, even though he's not an offensive player. But I thought he had a really good quote about Byrum Brown, and he said, he walks around like he's the guy, and that's what I want out of my quarterback. And I think that's the thing, is like Auburn has not hidden the fact that they're putting a lot on Byrum Brown this year. They are expecting him to set the tone for this new era of Auburn football and hit the ground running with this offense and establish that proof of concept, take that step forward. And he's really kind of carried himself in line with that. I've thought, like, when you watch him, you see a guy that's like, I know what I'm doing. I know where I'm going with the ball. Yes, you got to learn stuff. You can always continue to get better, but he just carries himself like as a guy that's been here for forever because he's been in this system for forever.
Those expectations are on Byrum Brown in part because of what he did at South Florida last year and the fact that he's come to Auburn with his coaches and with a lot of his with his teammates. I think it's also those expectations are there because we're in an era where quarterbacks have shown up at programs and immediately we've seen a reversal of fortune, right? Where if you have the right quarterback, just think about the last couple of years, right? Like John Mateer, Diego Pavia. I think you could even say Lenora Sellers the first year, right? Like 2 years ago when they win 9 games because they put it together, and Sellers is having great game after great game. It's like
Well, I say that, and like I get what you're saying there, Dan, and like I agree to it, except but like let's also just peel back a little bit more. The 2 quarterbacks that played the national championship game this past season were Fernando Mendoza and Carson Beck, 2 established quarterbacks that went to their new team and immediately helped make them better, right? Trinidad Chambliss, again, making a big jump from D2 to the SEC. He's in the semifinal.
Now, I was trying to single out quarterbacks that showed up at places that hadn't been winning recently, like, or at least turned. I was trying to list some quarterbacks that turned places around. Your point about how far you can go with a transfer quarterback.
Well, I just think my point is that in this day and age, that is where a lot of success is coming. But yes, you're right. Yeah. That's a good point.
Like I think
Sellers was a freshman, right? Like he wasn't a transfer.
No, he wasn't a transfer, but he was a first year starter, right? Who takes over and they win more. And I just think now you've seen like, oh yeah, a quarterback can show up at a place that was in the bottom half of the SEC last year, and he can turn them around. I mean, John Mateer is probably the best example because he came with his offensive coordinator. Pavia is a fantastic example, right?
I think Pavia, different type of player in different situations. But I think Pavia is a good example, like a comp for Brown, because he's coming in, not with the head coach, obviously, is one thing, but the offensive coordinator, some pieces around him, and he's making a jump up. He was great, at the Group of 5 level, and now it's can he do it at the SEC level? Well, he proved he could. And with Byrum, obviously, he was more prolific at USF. And there's more pieces around him.
You had a great comp for Byrum while we were watching. By the way, I see it
stylistically. So I mean, I wrote about this in the observations. I'll say it again here for those of you who didn't read. I was talking to somebody earlier this week about Byrum Brown, guy who I've known for a while, who covers the NFL draft, and was just saying what I thought about Byrum Brown as a guy who's here and covering him. And this guy had said he was pretty high on Byrum as a draft prospect for 27. It's like, yeah, the mechanics are one thing, and you'd want to clean that up, but I'm not as worried about it as some other. Like, I'm not obsessed with mechanics as other guys are at the quarterback spot. And if you can get it done, you can get it done. But he had a comp that I had not heard. But when it happened, or when he said it, and then I saw it on Tuesday, it really clicked into place just watching him closely. He said, physically, he reminds me a lot of Dak Prescott. And I see it. I mean, he's a runner, but a big, powerful runner. And he's got a really strong arm that can really kind of put some zip behind it because he's got some bulk behind him when he tears into a ball.
He seems to he's evocative of the kind of quarterback that Urban Meyer and Dan Mullen signed for a long time. You could look at Ohio State and for several years the kind of guys that Urban Meyer was leaning on when they were winning. Certainly at State, Dan Mullen had Dak Prescott, he had Fitz, right, who also ran hard, had a very strange throwing motion, and had enjoyed some
tall, strong, dual threat quarterbacks. And I think when you watch Byrum run, especially like on film from USF, you see that kind of like what Dak was, where it's just like he's straight up with it, but it's like people are bouncing off of him. He can accelerate. He's got to give him like people wanted to make the Cam comparison with Dak for a while, and it's just he's different. He was different. Cam obviously bigger, I would say probably faster than that. But
I think you got to be so careful with. I think Cam and Tebow are both guys where it's like you got to be really careful about comparing a college quarterback that as a comp to either of those guys because of.
I think the thing with Tebow is like I don't know, man. There's just Tebow was so unique, and just like You know, I'm trying to think of guys that like played like him.
I will say of all the people we've mentioned so far, like the throwing motion probably reminds me. Like I get why people see Byrum sort of they see Byrum sort of drop it low and then throw it kind of like a baseball pitcher. And I mean, look, I've seen guys with unusual deliveries from Tim Tebow to Phillip Rivers, like make it work, really make it work. Lamar Jackson,
and I think,
didn't throw it textbook, and enjoyed tremendous success.
And my thing with Byrum is you watch him and it's the numbers he did and just he makes things happen. Like it's just he gets it done. The other thing is his deep ball. It's pretty, man. Yep. Like we were watching it, they were doing a drill where they were running wide receivers were working on getting the right leverage on a nine ball, downfield going in the end zone. And I mean Byrum is laying them in there. And they're hitting guys in stride. They're looking good. There's confidence in it. I think he went like 5 for 6 in that drill. It looks, and again, no defender, no pass rush, nothing like that. But it's he was one of the highest rated deep ball throwers in the country at USF, and you can see why. It's just that thing comes out of his hand, and it's a nice spiral, and it's leading the guy, and it's not too hot, or it's not too high, or it's not feeling like that. Like it is just where you want it, and that's something that is such a key part of this offense, especially with the type of receivers that they got, that I think folks should get excited even more about it. It's just his deep balls for real. I'm not going to say he's going to come out there and throw for 5,000 yards at Auburn next year, but I do think when they want to turn it loose, he is a guy that you can have a lot of confidence in. Instead of like in years past where Auburn's had some guys with some good arms throwing the ball downfield, but you never knew what was going to happen. Like, how many times did you have an open receiver downfield and it just couldn't, it wasn't going to connect.
Shout out to Gus Malzahn, right? Who's on the college football playoff committee. That's really exciting.
Awesome for Gus. Cause here's my thing with Gus in retirement, he was always going to have to find something to do with the football.
I'll tell you why I bring that up is because Cody played for Gus. Cody Burns, Auburn receivers coach, played for Gus. Gus's philosophy, and he said it all the time, was you have to make the other team respect your ability to go over the top as an offense. Yeah. A lot of what you're trying to do at the line of scrimmage isn't going to work if the other team knows that you're at 10 yards and in offense and that you're not going to try it.
It's like when a basketball team can't shoot threes.
Yeah. I mean, a lot. You can try, all kinds of sophisticated back cut sort of action, but it's a lot easier to defend when you don't have to step out that deep and worry about shooting. And I think with a defense, if they know that you're limited in your ability to score over the top, it all gets easier. And that's certainly been the case, I think, for Auburn these last couple of seasons. Uneven success over the top in different years, and I think you can point to your overall success as an offense and connect the two. And so I think the idea that Byrum Brown, has that ability, and one of the things I'm watching for this spring, and you're not going to get your answers for several months, but right. The ability of these receivers to translate to the SEC, right? The guys coming over with Byrum from South Florida. And I mean, look, I think that, yes, you can sort of take you can be skeptical of the fact that a group of receivers followed their coach and their quarterback to Auburn. I think if those players had decided to go in the portal, guys like Singleton and Nimrod, these are, and they're not the only two, but I think if those players had gone in the portal and they didn't come to Auburn or they didn't want to continue playing for Alex Golesh, they'd have found
major ball.
I was gonna, they'd find a home somewhere in major conference college football, and the fact that they chose continuity, they chose to remain, playing for Alex Golesh and playing for Cody Burns and playing with Byrum Brown. I certainly don't want to hold that against them. Right?
No,
I think it's probably because it very well could be to their benefit and to Auburn's benefit and to Byrum Brown's benefit. Right? Like it very that he's got so many guys that he knows so well as potential targets this fall.
Receiver, you mentioned a couple of guys that have obviously, had that established experience and all that. Nimrod, I think, is a guy that every time you talk to anybody, it's, man, this guy looks like the real deal. Singleton as well. But I think Nimrod having that experience when he was at Tennessee helps him a ton. I'm telling you, Dan, I don't know how much you watched him on Tuesday or how much you seen him. I'm super impressed with Jeremiah Coger.
Yep.
Like, he looks like – and look, Auburn – lost an elite talent at wide receiver in Cam Coleman, transferring to Texas. Everyone knows that, right? Coger physically, let me be very clear, physically looks like what you had outside with Cam. And he's got a runway. He's got multiple years of eligibility remaining. And
now I want to be clear about now let me jump in there. Like with Cam Coleman, the physicality wasn't the total package, right? Like a lot of
with Cam, he had unreal ball skills. That was the separating factor between extremely athletic outside receiver and what Cam Coleman was. I think with Coger, though,
prototypical size, absolutely.
There is a smoothness to his game. There is an explosiveness to it. It just he looks good out there, and it's early. It's really early, but this was a guy that when Nimrod went down last season at USF. Byrum Brown went to him often, and he ended up putting up some really, really big numbers. And he's got a lot of what you want out there at the outside receiver. I was really impressed with him. I'll also say this. I wrote about the tight ends earlier this week, Dan, and Auburn's got several guys on at the tight end room that are listed at 6'5" and 6'6". Jonathan Eccles, big number one, is one of them, the USF transfer. He looks bigger than the rest of them. Like, if you told me that guy was closer to 6'8" than 6'6", I'd believe you. He looks different. And he's in a non-contact jersey right now, but he's still participating pretty well. I think they're just being careful with him and the amount of hits he can take. But, like, there was a possession. There was a drill. I'm sorry. There was a drill that they were doing on Tuesday where they're going through a concept on the outside with two different quarterbacks throwing the ball, and they're running up, and it was a play, especially out of RPO and pop stuff that USF does in their offense, where it's a seam ball. It is just go downfield, down the middle of the field to a tight end, and Eccles went and got it, and I was like, oh my goodness, like a defense has got to be terrified of that potential, because here's Godzilla running down the middle of the field, catching passes for you. He's really impressive. Coger and Eccles, Dan, were the two guys I thought watching the receivers and tight ends catch on Tuesday from when we were out there. Those are the two guys that jumped out to me the most. They are really, really impressive players to me.
Yeah, I want to shout out Bryce Kane too, right? Because that's another guy that I think we've seen.
He started going, and I think it was one of the backup quarterbacks, and they're running like a wheel route, and Kane goes, and the ball comes out of his hands, and I go, oh, he threw that one too deep. Nope. No, Bryce Kane just goes and hunts that thing down.
Oh, we'd seen some overthrows too, and it's like, Bryce Kane was like, yeah, you're not overthrowing me. Like, nope, and I'm excited for him to get an opportunity. We'll see what the receiver rotation ends up looking like. But I keep having this feeling, ever since he stuck around, that, and look, and I understand if folks expect like a huge drop off at wide receiver, like from last year to this year, but because you don't have those big names anymore.
And look how many wins those big names got you.
Exactly, and I think that with it's not just about the receiver; it's about the combination of the receivers and the quarterbacks and and everything else that goes along with it. The offensive line, the pass protection, like the situation. So,
I think a really good wide receiver room and really good wide receivers can take your offense to the next level. I think I don't want to call them just a straight up a luxury item, because I think it's more than that, but it is kind of luxury feeling where you can have, and we saw it with the Freeze 4 guys, I was like, you can have all this talent, but like if you ain't got the right stuff to get the ball there to them, it's pretty frustrating. Hey, how about another name at wide receiver? Brian Williams Jr., Saw Alex Golesh really working with him closely. He's a guy I've heard a lot more about these last few days. Freshman. Guy they got from Orlando. What's the thing about Brian Williams, Junior Dan, we were just talking about with Singleton and Koger and their size and physically what they look like? Brian Williams Jr. is true freshman, 6'4", 190. It's got a lot of what you like. It's just about turning that into something special. So keep an eye on that. But really, again, impressed with Byrum Brown. I continue to just be like, yeah, the hype is real with this guy. It is. I'll throw one more note in here about the passing game before we move on. Dan, I don't know how much you got to watch him or how much you paid attention to him, but I like Tristan Tia. He's got some real arm talent. The transfer from Oregon State that, Auburn's – he's a redshirt freshman. Auburn is going to try to develop him for the future. I like him a lot. He has some real arm talent. I don't know, obviously only got a little bit of experience at Oregon State last season, but he has some at the power conference level or ish, whatever you want to call Oregon State right now. But yeah, I mean, some of the balls he throws are really, really good looking, and I like Tristan Tia a lot. Fun fact about Tristan Tia, Dan, that I found out the other day, just going through the roster and stuff like that. Tristan Tia played in the Little League World Series.
Ooh,
yeah. So he's been on the big stage before for a guy at a young age. But yeah, but anyway, I wanted to throw that note in there about Tristan Tia because he looks good. He looks good for a guy that you're developing clearly as a QB2, maybe a guy that could be in the mix for your starting quarterback in 2027 and beyond. Keep an eye on Tristan Tia. Looking good. Dan, you weren't out there when this happened, so I'm going to fill you in a little bit. After practice, the offensive line did more up-downs and extra conditioning than I've ever seen a college group do. There was a lot of yelling. There was a lot of very emotional speeches going on. Cole Best, the center, who we've heard is just a big leader and culture guy for this offensive line and was at USF, was really getting into it. But we're waiting on a couple of offensive linemen for their interviews, and we have to wait an extra while for them because they're catching their breath. I mean, after practice, they are moving.
We've had a couple podcasts where we decided afterward we need to do some extra up downs.
Well, my question to you is just offensive line. It's early, but what is your thoughts right now? What are your thoughts on this offensive line early on? There's some real intrigue there, I think, especially with an injury or two that you've got up front.
Well, I think that it's a shame that you don't have Ramil 100% and active as part of it, because I feel like if you did, you could maybe start trying to piece together a starting five, right, and really start to look and see if because I remember earlier in the offseason, the desire for Alex Golesh to get that starting five established early and start building chemistry, with the figuring out who those five guys are going to be, and with some injuries and with so many new pieces, you wonder how long it's going to take to sort of settle on who your starting five are on the offensive line. I get the feeling that Cole Best and Big Joe Simmons. But by the way, I'm only calling him Big Joe as I'm treating that like it's his first name. So he has been maybe my favorite guy to talk to so far. Yeah, by the way, great. I really enjoyed getting to chat with Big Joe. He had some cool stuff about being recruited by Signee to James Madison a couple of years ago when we got to chat with him about his journey. But I think Big Joe seems like a very safe bet as one of your starting tackles, probably your right tackle. And Cole Best seems like your starting center. Beyond that, I think a lot of guys have something to say about who's going to be out there.
Skinner at one of the guard spots feels like a good bet, but you look at the rest with no Ramil out. Ty Buster, who we talked to after practice, is a guy that's getting a lot of love at left tackle and continues to. He was someone that you heard, hey, he's redshirting this year, but he's doing really well. And he said, Dan, after practice, this guy's a redshirt freshman. He has not played much, if at all, I don't think, of college football. Let me double check and see if he got in a game last season. While I bring this up, he played in 2 games. Played against Ball State and Mercer. Okay, so that's it. Some mop up duty in those 2 games. Ty Buster said after practice today, he said, with all the older guys leaving, I'm paraphrasing here, with all the older guys leaving, he's like, I came into this year saying this starting job is mine. A spot is mine. That's big for an offensive lineman, but like he's been able to back it up. He's a really interesting cat for sure. Like that's a guy that people really liked last season, and he's continued in that progression. And he's got an opportunity now, but what does that look like? What does that look like for those young guys?
I think I told this story on a previous episode of the podcast, but since Ty Buster is running first team, I'll share it now. Justin, is when I was in Vegas for the Resorts World Classic, I stayed after the Players Era to call some games for Troy in the Resorts World Classic. That's where I saw Seattle U play in a couple games. So after Troy won the Resorts World Classic, I went next door to Circus, and I was playing some of the tables, and I was having a nice run at Circus and chatting with some of the people next to me. And one of the people in the party next to me worked at Ty Buster's high school. And when they found that I was covering Auburn, they were like, well, as a matter of fact, like someone, and they had nothing but nice things to say about both Ty Buster and his desire to make it work at Auburn, right? Mm-hmm. So I mean, and I didn't want to like throw anything out there when he was when he was deciding to stay or go, right? Like let him make his choice. I wasn't all that shocked based on what I heard that he's decided to stay, and right. I just know, and that's quality like personal stuff about him, but like on top of the fact that everyone you talk to says this guy projects someday, and maybe someday is now. But like this guy projects as a guy who can be a starter in the SEC on the offensive line.
Yeah, no, like him. Derek Claus is another one to keep an eye on.
Yeah, how about who's a transfer who I feel like maybe in some of my analysis of the group has gotten lost in the shuffle. Mm-hmm. But it's like no, he's somebody that sounds and I guess there's some of that with Lehrer too. Yeah. Where it's like these are guys that could very well earn starting positions. Like don't sleep on either.
He played in a handful of games last year for Miami. That Miami team played a lot. Obviously went to the national title game. He's got 2 years of experience at a really good power conference program right now, and I think that carries. That kind of stuff helps.
Do you still feel like and I guess this is unknowable, but we'll play like sliding doors, if Ramil was healthy right now, do you feel like he'd be a safe bet to be a starter at tackle, or the plan was for him to be the? Yeah.
I think so, but I mean, I'm interested to see as long as
plans can change, right? Plans can change.
And here's the thing: even if he's the plan, you're going to need more. Who's guys 6, 7, 8, 9 on that offensive line? Even when you feel like you've got a starting 5, and I think. I wrote about it last year or 2 years ago, I think. One of the things to keep in mind is that, hey, Auburn, Auburn has a starting line that they liked last year, and obviously, that didn't really work out. But I went back and looked, and it was like it had been 30 years since Auburn had started the same guy on the offensive line for every single game. Like you need. It's just a combination. Somebody's going to get hurt. Somebody's going to miss time. You're going to have to move pieces around. And some of the best offensive lines that Auburn's had in the last 20 or 30 years have been ones that were 6, 7, 8 deep with dudes that could play and start for you. And so you're going to have those kind of guys. So really interesting to see kind of that. And there's a lot on that group. The conditioning and the extra stuff is like they talked a lot about consistency and finishing plays and effort and having that going through, because if you're going to play this breakneck tempo offense where you're trying to snap it as quickly as possible and you're going deep and you're going big play, your offensive line's got to go. They got to go. And you got to be able to, like, when it works and works really well, go back to the best days under Gus Malzahn. When it works really well, that defense is still trying to get set and call plays, and your offensive line's set and ready to punch them in the mouth. They got to develop that. They've got to be able to develop that. Easier said than done. And it's still early. It's early, and so there's got to be a lot of progress made. So a lot of offense from day 7 of Auburn spring practice. You can check out the observations again, like we said, from Tuesday. Check out that tight end story as well, and we'll have more stuff over the next few weeks as we get closer and closer to the 8A game and what has been a very interesting spring practice. One more point, Dan. We got the answer about Dixieland Delight. So that was called the Iron Bowl period.
Do you want to first present the question of Dixieland Delight before you tell people? Well,
they played they played Dixieland Delight during the 5th period when we were out there at practice, and apparently they're doing that every practice because
they want to. Oh, it's Tuscaloosa simulation.
Yes, and they want to go ahead and already have it in your mind that you're going to hear this. And to keep in mind, when you hear this, it's going to be go time because that's the biggest game of the year. That's the one that matters. And
now they're playing the studio version. They're not.
Yes.
It does not include. They're not playing the Tuscaloosa edit.
That would be tough. That would be pretty tough. But Ty Buster said afterwards, he said, like, one of the things Golesh has talked about is said the Iron Bowl's lost its juice. You know, Auburn can come in and play close, especially Jordan-Hare, but this rivalry ain't what it used to be. He's like, we got to get it back. We got to get it back. And so in March, you're already looking to the Iron Bowl is 8 months away, and you're already talking about it. Never too early. And I think that's a really good thought. And it goes back to, Dan, something we talked about on our last podcast, and I just want to say it again. The difference we're hearing about this staff and this team and their identity and their focus of getting things right now, as opposed to the last administration where in year 1 you heard so much of we need time, we need patience, wait till we get our guys in, X, Y, and Z. It's different. I'm not saying it's guaranteed to work. I'm not saying it's guaranteed. But what I'm saying is that you're not sitting there saying, well, guys, we just need patience. We need to – you're hearing now that's like, hey, we got to get Auburn football back. And one of the big steps to getting Auburn football back is making sure the Iron Bowl, especially ones played in Tuscaloosa, feel like actual football games that Auburn can win again. So never too early, and I know that's music to some Auburn fans' ears for sure. All right, let's talk some basketball. We are approaching, by the time you're listening to this, you'll be 1 day away from the NIT semifinals at Hinkle Fieldhouse in Indianapolis. Dan, I talked about it on the last podcast. I've always wanted to cover a game at Hinkle. I'm very much looking forward to it. It's going to be a lot of fun. You know, it's been a lot of extra basketball here in this NIT run, but it's going to be one more really good trip, and I'm looking forward to it. And this is a fascinating semifinal between Auburn and Illinois State that we will break down in depth. But one of the things, before we get into the game itself, that I thought was really interesting, Dan, as we get started, is this is a long layoff. Auburn, when they have played, it will have been 8 days since they last played. And for an Auburn team that is playing certain guys 40 minutes a night, and if not 40 minutes, 36, 37, 38, 39 minutes a game, and you're limited in your rotation because of Keyshawn Murphy opting out, and you were just a thinner team because of injuries this season, I'm really interested to see how much that layoff is going to help Auburn because they needed it. They took they basically took 3 out of 4 days off after beating Nevada, and they're still going to get more than a full workload of practices, between these games and next one. So I'm interested to see how that impacts this game because Illinois State goes deep on their bench.
Yeah, Auburn hasn't had 10 days off since they started conference play. Right, I want to say they took it there. There was a long layoff after Purdue, right? During the holidays, but for the most part, this is an Auburn team that's been on the ground. I mean, even they lose to Tennessee and they're playing South Alabama a couple of days later to start the NIT. It's not like they had a super long layoff between the end of the regular season or the end of the SEC tournament and the start of the postseason. So yeah, I think for a team that's been pretty for a team that's leaned on its starters to play, especially without Keyshawn Murphy, it's leaned on these guys to play really heavy minutes in the NIT so far. I think a long layoff is probably that's a blessing. That's something that Auburn can use hopefully to its advantage in the game against Illinois State. By the way, Justin, amazing coincidences. I love that you get to go to Hinkle and cover a game. I got to do a game at Allen Fieldhouse earlier in this year, and incredibly, I went to Illinois State last year. They were Troy's opponent in the WNIT. By the way, Illinois State's women are back in the semifinals of the WNIT. They're playing sometime this week as well. And then there's two Sun Belt teams on the other side of that bracket. There's an Arkansas State Marshall game in the WNIT semifinals this week. Again, for real sickos, for the hardcores who love this time of year in college basketball, can't get enough. There's some cool stuff. But Illinois State is that is a fascinating, they've got a fascinating basketball history. A lot of Doug Collins mentions, and his name's all over the gym. But they're gonna. It's not. I think did Steven mention it's not that far from.
No, it's 2 hours.
Normal's not that far from Indianapolis, and a lot of these they've never been this far in the NIT before either. So it should be a game where you see quite a few of the quite a few fans in red.
Illinois State's interesting, like you're saying, Dan. I'm just looking through, just clicking around. Kevin Stallings coached there. Porter Moser coached there within the last 30 years, 20 years there. How about this? I had forgotten this until I was with some family members on Monday night, and my brother-in-law, who is a Kentucky fan, reminded me Antonio Reeves came from Illinois State before he was the sharpshooter for UK. He was at Illinois State, so a really interesting team with a really interesting history. And like we said, that Auburn is playing the Cinderella of the NIT. Mm-hmm. So much of this NIT has gone chalk. Three of the 4 1 seeds in this field are in the Final Four in Indianapolis, right? But the one that upset it all, the one that's thrown everything off, has been Illinois State, because what have they done? They beat Kent State by 21 at home. They go to Wake Forest and win on a late 3, right before the buzzer, and they knock off a 1 seed Wake Forest. And then they go to Dayton and pretty much lead that whole game, kind of wire to wire at UD Arena, and punch their ticket to the Final Four of the NIT. This is Cinderella, and guess what? They play like Cinderella, man. They're deep on their bench.
It's appropriate that this game is being played in the same gym where the Hoosiers final, was like that. This is the gym from Hoosiers, and this is a team full of. They are undersized and they shoot right. This Illinois State team is it's another, the UFC tournament continues, right, where you just see the craziest clash of styles in every single round, and now you're seeing now you're seeing some real the Horizon League, Summit League, now you're seeing some.
This is the Valley. They're in the Valley.
Yeah. You're they play in the Valley, but this is there's a lot of Dakota influence on this Illinois State roster.
Yeah, so top 100 team in the country in terms of playing on their bench, top 50 team in the country in terms of experience, top 15 team in minutes continuity, so they've played a lot together. Like you said, Dan, a smaller team. Their starting backcourt is 5'11" and 6'2". So it'll be interesting to see how they match up with Auburn there. But right outside the top 100 in terms of three-point shooting attempts, they shoot 35% as a team. Three-pointers have been very key to what they've done in the NIT and has been successful down the stretch. They got 4 guys on the team that shoot about 40% from deep. It's a team that's going to want to, if you're Auburn, what they're going to want to come in and do to you. We said it. I asked Stephen Pearl about this on Monday when we talked and said, You felt like Auburn let their foot off the gas these last couple of games with those 3-pointers that they've given up. They've got some good film out there challenging the three. They got to do that for 40 minutes because what is Illinois State going to do? They're going to just keep shooting. Wake Forest was up 9 with a handful of minutes left, and Illinois State just was knocking down threes until they hit the big one to win it. They're not going to give up. They're going to come in and fire and fire and fire and play for you all 40 minutes. And if they're not firing from deep, Dan, they've got, if you want to talk about the first UFC fight, the early days of the UFC, they got one of the most intriguing players in all of college basketball in Chase Walker up front.
Yeah.
And if you don't know Chase Walker, let me tell you, he's 6'9" and 280 pounds. He's a load. He reminds me a lot. He looks a lot like DJ Burns from a few seasons ago at NC State. And he takes, a lot of their possessions run through him. And he's got a great assist rate for a big man. He's a solid defender. He gets to the line very frequently, about a 70% free throw shooter, but he's a big fella. And when they came back and beat Wake Forest, which is really the only time I've watched Illinois State play extensively this season, they were dumping that thing down in there to him and letting him go to work. And if you don't hold up well against defense, he's going to score on you. And if you double him or do that, he's a gifted. He's kind of like what Auburn has done in the past, especially with Janai. These last couple seasons with Janai. It's a big man they can trust with the ball in his hands to beat you one-on-one. And if you have to bring more traffic in to stop him, he's going to kick it out to a really good shooter.
Oh yeah, he's a perfect fit for what Illinois State's trying to do, and surrounding a player like that with shooters, makes it really, really tough because you have to play him honestly. And I mean, look, he's scored, I think, 10 or more points in every game this season, something like that. I think he's had 5 or more rebounds in practically every game they've played like this season. Like, this guy is old reliable for Illinois State, and a lot of what they do runs through him and then back out to the three-point line. And that's something Auburn has been better at defending at during this tournament, but was consistently a problem for the Auburn defense during the regular season. And a team that can exploit that could be, could present some problems for Auburn in the half court.
Yeah, he's averaging 15.5 points during the NIT. He can get into foul trouble, but he's really efficient as a scorer. So it'll be interesting to see how Auburn goes at him and how he tries to defend him. He was the MVP of the CBI last year. He's a first-team All-Missouri Valley guy the last couple of years. He's a captain. Like, he's the guy that runs everything. And then they surround him with really good shooters. Johnny Kinziger, their 5'11 shooting guard. Or 5'11 point guard, I should say. Sorry. He's in the NIT. He is shooting 48% from deep. Dude is lighting it up right now. And he's the only other guy on that team that averaged double figures for the season. But a lot of what they do is they are methodical on offense and play efficiently through that. And then on the defensive end, they just, because they're so experienced, even though they don't have a great size, because they're so experienced, they played well with one another. They do a good job of just running good stuff on the defensive end and making it tougher for you to break them down. So be very interested to see what they do, on the defensive end in this game, because Auburn's going to have a size advantage, but they crash the defensive glass well, and they just play really good half-court defense. Top 80 in the country in three-point defense and two-point defense. They just really make you earn it. They're not going to block a lot of shots. They're not going to force a lot of steals. They're just going to sit back there and run their game and play well, and then get stops and then turn them into good methodical possessions on the other end of the floor. That's the way they want to go about their business, because they're so experienced, and so many of these guys have played with one another. And then they've got some other dudes that are really experienced. This is a great name, Bowden Skunberg.
Yeah, so Skunberg,
he was North Dakota State.
Yeah, and he was the leading scorer for North Dakota State a couple of years ago. He's not having a great tournament so far, but he's, I think he's really been struggling from the outside. But he's been someone with a track record as a college basketball player. Like, you go back to, like, he missed an entire season, I want to say, but before that he was the best player on North Dakota State, one of the best players in that league, and found his groove again this year. He's had a quieter tournament, but you know what? Maybe a week off for a guy like that is going to help him as well, right? Like you talk about the benefit for Auburn, but for someone, you've seen it before, Justin, for a shooter in a cold stretch, like sometimes a break is incredibly beneficial. You're
talking about the Dakota flavor. Ty Pence,
yep.
The 6'6" guard for them has been good off the bench. They have a 6'2" guard, and Mason Clabo, a freshman. He was North Dakota's high school all-time leading scorer. Scored nearly 2,400 points in his high school career. Has not been a high-volume guy in the NIT, but he's a 40% three-point shooter. Really good freshman. Landon Moore played at Butler for a couple of years. They bring him off the bench. I mentioned Pence. He had a great game against Wake Forest. Had a solid game against Dayton. Tyreek Coleman's been a guy that they've leaned on for some experience.
Did you mention that Clabo was the leading scorer in the history of North Dakota?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, incredible stuff.
Yeah, he's really special talent. And then they have a 7'1" guy who comes off the bench for him, so they don't have a ton of size. But then there's big, and so many of these dudes, obviously outside the freshmen, some of these guys you see second year at Illinois State, third year at Illinois State. Like these guys know each other and they play well, and I think you see that they play good team basketball on both ends of the floor, and they've been able to beat teams that are better than them, bigger than them, more talented than them. And Auburn's got to avoid making those mistakes and getting in that mode. Like, you've got to play good, clean basketball against these guys to beat them, because this team's built to take advantage of what ails you. So off of that long layoff, it's going to be very interesting to see what Auburn does there with this Illinois State team. Interesting stat, Dan. In the NIT, Auburn had all 5 of Auburn's starters are averaging double figures. We talk about the balance being important to this team and how you don't want to be just one guy getting it going, 2 guys getting it going. It's Kevin Overton's averaging 17, Keyshawn Hall 14.7, Elijah Freeman 12.7, Ty Pettiford 12, and Philip Jovich is at 10.7. This is an offense that's averaging over 80, shooting 46% from the field in the NIT. I think one of the things that's helped Auburn here down the stretch, yes, their defense has been better for the most part in most of these games. But, Dan, I think a big difference maker in this NIT run, in addition to the fact that I think you're playing some teams that are not as good as the teams you've been playing in the SEC, that's an obvious thing. But one of the things that I think has been key to this success, Dan, is for this Auburn team playing against a bunch of underdogs who are trying to knock them off, is they have balance. And I thought, like, down the stretch of the season, there were so many losses Auburn had where it was just, okay, 1 or 2 guys were doing well on offense, but nobody else really was. It's helped that they've been able to get something from everybody here late. And that group doesn't even include the fact that, Sway's had a couple of good games on offense.
Right, and I've just been – I mean, there are different players you could single out. The tournament Freeman's had, right? Mm-hmm. Like, it feels like – and I made the point before, like, it feels like he's gotten better and better every week, every month throughout his exposure to major conference college basketball. But, Kevin Overton didn't have his best game – against Nevada, but Kevin Overton's had a really, really good, put together a really strong March, and we'll see how much of that continues into April. Like, I think for some of these guys, like they're it's not just about like, oh, well, what are you going to do after the season's over, and what are you going to be able, what are you going to do after the NIT? I think these guys want to finish this tournament with a championship. They're 2 games away from being able to make the best of a situation, and they've said it at press conferences, like it's not the tournament that they set out to make when the season started, but it's the tournament they're in, and it's the tournament they have a chance to win, and now they're going to go to Indianapolis with a chance to bring home that trophy and hang a banner.
Yeah, no,
or at least put a banner next to the cement wall behind us over on.
I'm interested in that because I haven't looked in Neville Arena. I don't know if there's an NIT banner for the women, but the women won the NIT.
I don't.
It's in the practice gym.
Yeah, I don't think any of the NIT banners made the move from Beard Eaves to the main ceiling.
The practice gym has the women's when they won it. Yeah. And I think that's the only reason you'd ever put up an NIT banner. Is like, hey, we won.
I think that Beard Eaves hung a NIT quarterfinal or participation banner. I think there's
don't do that.
Next time I'm at Beard Eves, I'll check. But I could have sworn there was a banner acknowledging the 09 season.
I think if you win, you can reference it but that's the thing that you just said. Like, this team has been very obvious. Like, we don't want to be playing in this tournament, but we are, so we're having to make the most of it. And look,
things change a little after a couple of Final Fours too, right? I mean,
and here's the thing: it's like there's going to be the talk where it's like Auburn's going to be in the Final Four venue. You know, it's going to be the city where the Final Four is. Like, oh, we could have been there. It's like, well, this team probably not, but you were there last year. But the thing there is that we talked about it recently on a podcast. Like, how far do you have to go in this tournament for you to say, okay, maybe making the NIT maybe helped out this team a little better than maybe being one and done in the NCAA tournament or going to Dayton and losing one. Like, maybe if you'd have won in Dayton and you got to play a first round game and you kept that streak alive and you got to win, maybe that feels different. But I think for the long-term trajectory of the program, being able to win several of these games, especially if you're able to retain some of these guys, I think is going to do more benefit than necessarily if they'd have gone up to Dayton and if they would have been in NC State or SMU's position and got knocked out on Tuesday or Wednesday.
I don't know how much success in the NIT turns down the pressure on Steven to succeed in
I think
year
it's
two.
a vibes changer. I think it's a vibes shifter. I don't think it's a vibes fixer, but I think it's a shifter.
Yeah, I think that's a fair way to describe it, because I think that even if you'd snuck into the NCAA tournament and gotten bounced early, I think there'd still be pressure on Steven not to regress in year two. And now you're in a situation where you didn't make the NCAA tournament and you have a chance to win the NIT. You're in the semifinal. There's still pressure on Steven not to regress in year two. And I think it's tough to spin.
No, you need to take a step forward next year. You need to get back into the tournament.
Even with an NIT championship, even if you get to hang the banner and print the rings and do the whole celebration.
Do you print rings?
I think so. I think that.
Is that how that works?
I do. Well, I mean, you print like the names on the rings, right? Like you
think you meant print the shirts.
Yeah, I guess so. What do you do with the ring? You engrave the rings?
Order the rings?
Yeah, well, you print the. Okay. Well, anyways, I digress. the fact is, you better not title this "Print the Rings."
Print the rings. No, I definitely am.
Okay. Well, so this. The fact is, like with even if that's all true, like there's still tremendous. Like I think with Steven, like an NIT championship doesn't change the fact that folks want to see this team. You can't spin 2 years without an NCAA tournament when you take over a team that enjoyed the success Auburn did at the last few years of the Bruce Pearl era.
The standard is make the tournament. The standard is make the tournament, then make some noise in the tournament, and so you weren't able to do that, and so you have to. But the vibes have shifted. We'll see what they do in Indianapolis, but you feel better about Auburn basketball than you did a couple of weeks ago, and I think that matters. We'll see how much it matters in the long run. Speaking of vibes, we knew Auburn was going to have to get some big men in this upcoming offseason, and they've already gotten off to a start with that, with the signing, not a commitment, already signing on Tuesday morning, the 7-foot French center Narcisse Goy. Narcisse Goy, who joins Auburn from the French second division, averaging 10.8 per game, 11.5 rebounds per game, 2.5 blocks per game, shooting 70% from the floor. He's a great rebounder, rim protector. There's a lot to like about him on film. We'll go into it a little bit more here quickly, and I'm hoping that maybe at some point in the near future I'll be able to kind of do a bigger piece and breakdown on him. But Stephen Pearl said after signing him, quote, "We're excited to welcome Narcisse Ngoy to our program. He's a high-upside young man who brings toughness, physicality, and a team-first mindset to everything he does. Narcisse has a strong feel for the game on both ends of the floor. His instincts, ability to catch and finish around the rim protection, and willingness to embrace contact will make him an immediate impact while filling a huge need for this team. What stands out the most is his commitment to winning. He's not focused on individual numbers. He takes pride in doing hard physical work that helps his team succeed. He competes at a high level, processes the game well, and understands how to play a system. I'm interested to see what ends up happening with this guy because he's played several years in the professional ranks in France. He's 21. So, like, what does he come in as in terms of his eligibility in college? We'll see. I think, obviously, you need a big man. You need a big man with size and physicality like this. I would think that Auburn is nowhere like this isn't going to be a one and done thing in the front court, right? I think Goy is a guy who you're going to want to, or Ngoy is just going to be a guy that you're going to want to develop, and he can give you some good minutes, and he fills a need, like you said. I would be surprised if Auburn doesn't go out, considering the center market that's starting to build in the transfer portal. I'd be surprised if Auburn doesn't go out and get maybe an established, experienced Division I center, and have this guy along with him, have some real depth at center this season. And you would have had a little bit more this year with, Emeka Oporum if he would have been able to play. And obviously he had the health issue there. But
any word on how Emeka is doing, and any sense of if they're still, because I remember it was kind of striking how when they announced that he was stepping away to deal with his health situation, it was like basketball was on the back burner, right? And it was about him sort of recovering and then maybe getting back and pivoting back to basketball if the fates allowed it.
I will say this. I'm comfortable in saying this. I don't think I'm burning anything or saying anything I'm not supposed to. As you probably have seen in games, Mek's still with the team and has been on the bench and all that. I think he's progressing from his health issue, that he is on the path to getting back to playing basketball. I think that's a good way to put it. I don't know any sort of timeline. I don't know what he's thinking. I don't know what the future is going to hold for him necessarily. But
he might need to go somewhere where he has a more clear path to playing time himself, right?
So.
He's another guy. We don't talk about him as much when we talk about the looming transfer portal, which by the way is a week from as we record this, like the Tuesday after the national championship game.
It's like him and Abdul Bashir. It's like, okay, we'll see. I mean, we'll see. I feel the same way to a degree about guys like Caden Magwood and Simon Walker, which is like, okay, you did not have, for various reasons, a big role in the rotation this year. Will you moving forward? Are you willing to stay and compete for that? Or are you feeling like you need to go somewhere else and get a reset? I think for all those things, they're interesting. But going back to Ngoy, he played in the second division in France. And, talking about kind of what he brings to the table. He's physical. His film is a guy who wins a lot with his power. I'll be interested to see how he does with his conditioning, how he does with his technique. I mean, he's a very big, I think, and I'm saying this in a positive sense, Dan. I think he's a very big lump of clay that you can kind of mold him for. He's got a lot of potential. He's got a lot of upside. Is he a finished product? No, I don't think at this level. And when you look at the second division in France, it is European basketball. It is professional basketball. He's played for the last several years. Talking with people who know international ball, it's like this is kind of like getting a mid-major small conference player transfer. This is a guy who it's not the best European basketball you're going to find anywhere, but he has experience and he's played really, really well. I mean, he's one of the best players in his league. Has had a great run, and he's had some first division experience. But he's a double-double machine. He's a great rim protector. Dan, to me, this would be like getting a guy from, a smaller conference that has been a really good big man in that league for multiple seasons. And then it's like, okay, how does that translate to the SEC? How does that translate? Do you put all your eggs in one basket? It's not. I say that, and I say people are going to be like, oh, like Janai Broom. Janai was different because of who was going after him and just kind of, he was the very best of the best in college basketball for the small conference level. This guy, I think, is more of a high upside pick up that you get and say, let's see what you got in him. And I do think Auburn, though, I don't think he's the I would be very, very surprised if he's the only center or the only big man Auburn tries to go out and get in the portal. And we'll see. Jovic, Sway, those guys, Byrum, like those guys are going to have decisions to make this upcoming offseason for sure. That's just how the portal is now. But, yeah, this is a guy that I think, depending on how much eligibility he's got remaining, whatever the ruling is there, I mean, he checks a lot of boxes in what you want out of a big man in this system.
It would be enormous if Auburn felt like they've found their starting five for next year in Narcisse. We'll see if that's.
I would be very surprised
if
that was the case, not knowing who you were bringing back and not knowing who all is going to be in the portal. Right, it's going to be a pretty big class here coming up.
Right, if that's how this eventually turns out, that they've got a guy who can do that and will, I get the feeling that it reminds me a little bit more. Like, to me, that would be exceeding expectations, seemingly, if this guy can come in and give you like starters minutes.
Okay, let's just put it this way. I think Philip Jovic came from a little bit higher level of European basketball, and you know what Philip Jovic looked like when he came over here, right? So keep that in mind. I think
that was going to be my question: is sort of how do you compare it to the acquisition of Philip Jovic during last
different
offseason?
Types of players. I do think what he was playing in Eastern Europe, like his club ball, was a little bit of a step up, right? Just a little bit. I think, and personally, that's just kind of eyeballing it here. And look, what do we see with Jovic making this transition? Guy who, there's some highs, there's some lows, there's definitely room to grow, and I think you're going to get a lot of that out of this guy. But it's good that you go ahead and got it. And so, even if he's a second center for you, if he's depth, if he's a guy you're developing, and he's a lottery ticket, so to speak, in the front court, it's good to have that security there. And then if you want to go big ticket hunting, if you want to go out for the splash in the transfer portal, you have some security behind that as well. And I think that's a good move. What's interesting, Dan, is this comes a day after Stephen Pearl was asked about getting Brian Cloman, who we talked about on our last podcast about the new GM hire, and I wrote about him on Friday. Really interesting that he said, while he was talking about what he brings to the table, here's the quote. He said, BK's got a great international connection. If you look at the Final Four right now and you look at the teams that are in it, that's something that's become very prevalent in college basketball today, is that European taste almost to guys on the roster, and that's something he'll really help us out with. And then Auburn the next day signs a European big man. I'm telling you, it's really interesting, like how all that's going to come together, and it's going to be a fun offseason. But like we were saying, offseason hasn't started yet because Auburn's got one on Thursday night against Illinois State. We will have more coverage of that from Indianapolis, previewing that, getting ready for it in the next few days at the Observer. And, of course, we'll have coverage from the game in Hinkle.
All right, classic bit of nonsense to wrap this show up, because we were talking at practice about Mason Miller's entrance for the Padres, and we lured Taylor over, and we talked to him about some new metal songs that would fit in on the playlist at Jordan Hare. And so what's your top four of like 90s, 2000s hard rock that you could needle drop at different moments at Jordan Hare Stadium?
So I'm on record, if we're going hard rock, I'm on record as saying that I've always been surprised that no one has ever taken the field or anything to Welcome Home by Coheed and Cambria.
Oh, okay, there you go. All right.
Not really new metal, but very much hard rock, prog, like that kind of stuff. I don't know, what do you got?
I will start the bidding.
We'll go back and forth.
I'll start the bidding with. I'm not going to repeat artists. We can use the, if I say somebody, and you have a different song by them, don't let it ward you off. I will throw the Mission Impossible Limp Bizkit song out there. Take a Look Around from the Mission Impossible 2 soundtrack by Limp Bizkit, which may be the outro if this episode is called Print the Rings. We'll see, but it's that song's got some just And it's not, what Fred Durst is saying is mostly gibberish, I think, but the Mission Impossible influenced bass line and the way it kicks into that sort of thrash, it's good stuff.
We went back and forth.
Do you want a snake draft? Do you want me to pick again?
No, we went back and forth, and I was like, you mentioned When Worlds Collide by Power Man 5000. And I think that's
Rob Zombie's little brother, by the way,
Yes.
the lead singer of Power Man 5000.
That's the one I was thinking of. Like that could work for me.
So since you picked Power Man, I'll give older brother a call, and I'll say you could give me like Dragula, maybe. You could work Dragula into the playlist somewhere. I think people would get into it.
I've been on the record of like the new metal, hard rock, like to early 2000s bands. I've been on the record as saying that I legitimately enjoy System of a Down. Like that to me is the one. So I guess for like a state that like you could probably do some stuff from Chop Suey.
Something off of Toxicity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like
By the way, I sent you the video of the guys playing Chop Suey while
Yes.
cooking the wok, right?
Yes. I don't think it would work for a stadium, but the other day when I was driving home, BYOB came on, which I think is probably my favorite System of a Down song.
That's a good one. Ariel's underrated, right? Ariel's a good one. And
Toxicity, like the title track, Toxicity's really good.
I'm gonna tell the story of when Jason Caldwell used to come on the drive, and we would use the breakdown, and like we would use the most famous part of Down with the Sickness, right? And so I would think that you could maybe manipulate Down with the Sickness into a very stadium friendly sort of thing that builds up and then ultimately sets the crowd into a frenzy. So I will say get up and get down with the sickness.
So, and I'm gonna finish my fourth one, and it's not new metal. It's not there. It's not even this era. I guess it's 2000s. But I have always said, because we started with the Mason Miller thing, I have always said this song came out in 2007, so it'll count. I've always said if I was a closer, I am coming out to, and I guess you could do this for a football stadium or anything like that because of the song title. I'm coming out to Sorry You're Not a Winner by Enter Shikari, which I think is a perfect song for a closer, especially if you could get the crowd to do the clap 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 before the breakdown. I'm going with Sorry You're Not a Winner.
I think my closer entrance would be Tequila. But it certainly would be on the list. But I would say, the obvious. You saved me the best, which is the Linkin Park song at the end of Transformers, right? Like, of course you've got to work What I've Done into the playlist somewhere. Is that how you start the second half?
That's got to be the closing. That's got to be the outro to this podcast, right? In true Transformers fashion. Here's what I've done.